Alright, so we're going to start with our rebuild by disassembling parts of the power steering pump first. Ultimately, you'll need a 12 mil to remove this back panel right here. I've got an impact, electric impact, makes life so much easier. Okay, now that you're done that, remove the 4 bolts on the back plate. Remove the back plate. This will also take all of the vanes out as well. So here's your back plate. Remove the 4 screws and take this back plate off. Whew, and it is rather warm, so watch out for that. You've got one O-ring back here that you should replace, and then you can actually see the vanes here. And if you've never seen a power steering pump work, ultimately when we pick this up with the towel, these vanes, basically it works exactly like a rotary engine, more or less. It has these vanes that expand and then they grab fluid in the high part there, and as it moves around it compresses that fluid, which pressurizes the pump. Alright, so what I actually did was put the back plate back on, flip it upside down, and remove the vanes and everything on the back plate assembly. Forgot to do that originally. Ultimately now you're just basically have the housing assembly, the pulley. I'm going to go ahead and break the pulley loose as well here. So we're going to flip this guy over and use the impact on it as well. Alright, so now we're ready to remove the main pulley. Again, this is a real pain if you don't have an electric impact. I've tried it in the past. Almost impossible to do if you don't have an electric impact. By the way, guys, it is reverse threaded, so yeah, make sure you do it reverse, so righty is actually loosened, not tightening. Then you can remove your pulley, simple as that, and then that allows us access to the actual bearing. In this case, this bearing has a lot of play in it, or it did. You can't really see it, but it actually does move. The shaft actually has a lot of play in it, and the bearing started making noise. I'd previously greased it up. You can kind of see some of the grease down there. So we're going to replace that bearing as well as the seal underneath it. But first, we're going to try out our new parts washer. So we're going to throw this housing in the parts washer and give that a rip first. Probably needs more. Got our ultrasonic cleaner here. eBay unit actually, so has heat and a timer. Alright, so now we've got our freshly clean power steering pump assembly. It's not exactly perfect. There's some dirt down in the creases and everything, but overall took a lot of light dirt and some of the heavier stuff off. But again, not perfect. And I don't have a camera holder, so we're using paper towel holder today. So now that I'm going to do the rebuild, I've got 2 parts. This is for the 95 model specifically. Here's the part number. This is that main bearing that you see right there, and then there is a seal right behind it that we're going to replace as well. Normally I might actually clean this up a little bit more, but in this particular case we are selling the car and wanted to fix this because I don't know that the buyer might do it, and it's easy enough for me to do. So got a pair of needle nose pliers here, and we're just going to press down to remove this C-clamp, which can be a bit of a bear. Alright, with the help of a small screwdriver, when I was prying this with the needle nose, got the small screwdriver underneath and pulled that out. Ultimately, you do want to be careful because these can snap. In this particular case, I'm going to put a pair of needle nose right here so that if it snaps, it'll be contained by these needle nose right here. Shouldn't be an issue. And then we're going to go ahead and ease this the rest of the way out. And just like that, it's done. No major snapping or anything like that. Now we've got that retainer loose, we can go ahead and knock this bearing out. Honestly, I just hit this shaft with a hammer on the backside. Probably not the proper way. You're probably supposed to take the shaft out and then, because the shaft pushes backwards, and then use a bearing puller, but it's been effective for me in the past. A couple of light taps of the hammer comes right out. Obviously we'll probably do the same to pull it off the shaft, set it down on something, tap it with the hammer to get it off, and then ultimately there's a little bit of goo in here. Happens to have a paper towel handy, so that's useful. We'll just go ahead and wipe the rest of this grease. Again, this grease shouldn't really be there. That's because I had previously taken this apart. Couldn't actually find the right bearing. I thought I had the right bearing. I did not. So it's important that you order it for the right year model because they are different. The ones in the newer models are slightly bigger than this one. The high pressure hose is also a little bit different. And so now you can see we've got a little bit cleaner assembly, and we're going to knock that rubber seal out and replace it with the new one now. So to get this bearing off the shaft, right, because I pulled it out with the shaft from here, I used the actual housing as a press and basically set it in there backwards and then hammered it reverse, and that allows you to not press the bearing back into the main there. Allows you to easily and quickly press that out by basically just setting the bearing assembly straight down from the top side there. So what I did to get the bearing off the shaft is actually, instead of pressing it back in, I reversed it and then just took a hammer and lightly tapped it, and then it came right out. That allows you to have the bearing off, free of the shaft assembly. From there, to get this rubber seal here out that was pressed down in here, simply reversed over, took a pair of needle nose or a screwdriver, placed it, and then hit it with the hammer. I happen to be using a small framing hammer here. It doesn't really matter. I've also used big hammers in the past, mini sledges. And so now we're just going to reverse and press this back together. So now we've got our housing assembly all stripped apart. We're going to press the new seal down in there. I'm going to try doing this by hand. Appears to be pretty effective. Doesn't appear that you need a seal press or anything like that. You just press it down by hand, and that worked out pretty well. From there, we've got a new bearing here. Let's go ahead and open that guy up. Got this guy, new bearings there. I'm going to take this. I'm working on granite countertops in my kitchen, so we're not going to hit it. I'm just going to tap it lightly here, get that pressed all the way in place. You can also notice when it's fully seated, you're going to reinstall that snap ring as well. And of course, the piece that I forgot here is there's this little shim right here that goes between the seal and the bearing that I forgot to put in. So we'll go reverse that out. So reworking here, put our shim in, put our bearing assembly back in here, ultimately get that pressed down. Again, I use the shaft to press it out, same way that we had before. You can tell when it bottoms out there. Now we're going to reassemble using the snap ring and quote snap ring pliers, i.e. needle noses. So go ahead and situate that. Again, I'm going to do something similar just in case it let go. I like to set that so that if the snap ring flies off, it doesn't fly across the room. That'll keep it contained, which is pretty solid strategy. There's a couple different ways to set this in here. You can try to squeeze it. Again, my needle nose aren't actually cooperating very well. So we're going to see if we can't just get it down in there by pressing it manually here today. Okay, snap ring's fully seated. Felt it pop in place there. You can see that it's fully seated as well. So now we'll start reassembling. Now that you've got that in, you take your shaft, same exercise, just going to tap it. Should feel it bottom out. You should also be able to see that the threads here for the gear are right there, which means that it's fully seated. And then we'll go reassemble it. All right, reassembly, pretty straightforward. Apply your gear, get it set down. The nut is still in my impact here, didn't take it off. Reverse it, which is technically to the left. And looks pretty tight. Feels much tighter, the whole assembly does. And then we will reassemble here with all the various parts. So for reassembly, you'll notice that there is a hole on this one side. This first plate has basically a shallow hole which doesn't go all the way through, and then a hole that goes all the way through. You want to align the hole that goes all the way through obviously with one another because the back housing has the longer pin that goes all the way through. Okay, snap that in, grab our vane assembly here. Ultimately, you can also take the pins out if you want. You can remove the pins and actually insert them as well here. And make sure that that hole is not quite aligned, so we're going to have to turn that ever so slightly, which is kind of a pain, but we'll get it there. Again, the alignment pin really helps so that you can get that alignment done. Take out the second pin. They are kind of greasy, so kind of hard to grab onto. Those are both flush. Going to assemble the vanes. These holes go to the outside edge there, so that apparently they are site specific. Did not necessarily realize that. This pin's slightly bigger than the other one, and we should be good to go there. All right, so we've got that. We're going to grab our vane assembly. You'll notice the vanes are falling out on me. That's okay, not the end of the world. We'll put those back in momentarily. Probably better. Last time I did this, I actually didn't have the vanes fall out, which was kind of nice. I'd left them in that center assembly. But again, just to show you that it doesn't really matter, I purposely kind of let them fall out this time. Take them, just slide them down, right? Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. A little tedious, but nothing that's particularly difficult, so to speak. So they are actually tapered to one side. It's maybe a little hard to see it. Let's see if it focuses. It has one taper. It may just be from wear, and so I'm going to make sure that I put those in the right way. It doesn't look like I did that, and do that tapered edge to the outside. All right. Now that we're done with that, we'll place our new O-ring on there. Take the back plate. Back plate also, I believe, has the bigger hole. It's actually noticeably slightly bigger. That goes with this pin here. So we'll align that and snap it down, and hopefully everything gets back together. And we got a nice fit there. Didn't have to hit it or anything like that. And then we will put the bolts back in, and we will reassemble it on the car. One other thing to point out, I forgot these are not, for that bigger dowel pin, I forgot these are not centric, so this is actually a smaller side, so you can't put it on incorrectly, but there's actually an alignment pin right there that points to this outer case. Of course, I did it the hard way and tried to identify the bigger hole, but there's actually an alignment there as well.